The man lying in the carpet of golden leaves should have been dead, and part of me wondered if I was looking at a ghost. But ghosts do not bleed, and his blood was warm against my fingers when I pressed them to the wound on his side. I had gone to collect yarrow before the first frost claimed it, my basket half full when the crows led me to him. They circled above the old oaks at the edge of my land, their cries sharp and urgent, and I followed because my mother taught me that crows know things we do not. She was right. He lay crumpled between the roots of a tree older than the village itself, his clothes torn, his face pale beneath the dirt and dried blood. A rogue, I thought immediately. No pack scent clung to him, no mark of belonging, just a man alone in the wilderness, dying. I should have walked away. Rogues are dangerous, the elders always said. Wolves without packs are wolves without law. But I had been without a pack for 3 years, and I was still bound by every law my mother had written into my bones. Help those who suffer. Heal those who bleed. Do not let fear make you cruel. So I dragged him home. He was heavier than he looked, all dense muscle beneath the ragged clothes, and by the time I got him through my door, my arms burned and my breath came in ragged gasps. I laid him on the floor near the hearth, then built up the fire until the cabin glowed with warmth. The autumn nights had grown cold, and his skin was like ice beneath my palms. The wound in his side was deep but clean. A blade, not claws. Someone had tried to kill him with precision, which meant someone had wanted him dead for reasons beyond territorial dispute. I cleaned the wound with water boiled with herbs my mother had planted years ago, stitched it closed with steady hands, and dressed it with a poultice that would draw out infection. He did not wake through any of it, though his breathing steadied and color slowly returned to his face. I sat back on my heels and studied him in the firelight. He was striking in a way that made me uneasy. His features were too refined for a rogue, his jaw too clean despite the stubble, his hands too smooth despite the calluses. Rogues lived hard lives. They looked it. This man looked like he had known hardship only recently, like it was a costume he had not yet learned to wear. I told myself it did not matter. He was injured. I was a healer. The rest was not my concern. He woke near dawn, when the light through my windows turned the color of honey. I was grinding dried chamomile at my mother's old table when I heard him stir, and I turned to find him watching me with eyes the color of winter storms. Gray, pale, piercing. They held an intensity that made me want to step back, though I held my ground. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. "My cabin," I said. "I found you bleeding in the forest. You would have died." He tried to sit up and winced, his hand going to his bandaged side. "The wound," he said. "You treated it. I am a healer. It is what I do." He looked around the cabin then, taking in the bundles of dried herbs hanging from the rafters, the jars of tinctures lining the shelves, the worn wooden floors my mother had swept 10,000 times. His gaze lingered on the small altar in the corner where I kept her memory, a candle and a lock of her hair and the silver ring she had worn until the day she died. "You live alone," he said. It was not a question. "I do. Is that safe for an Omega?" I felt my spine stiffen. I did not ask how he knew what I was. Perhaps he could smell it on me, that particular scent that marked me as lesser in the eyes of every pack I had ever known. Or perhaps it was simply obvious. A woman alone in a cabin at the edge of nowhere, with no alpha's mark on her throat, and no pack's protection around her. "I have survived 3 years alone," I told him. "I think I can manage." Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, perhaps, or curiosity. He did not press further. I brought him broth that morning, and bread I had baked 2 days before, and he ate like a man who had not seen food in weeks. But his manners betrayed him. He held the bowl with a certain grace, tore the bread with precise movements, chewed with his mouth closed even when he was clearly starving. Rogues did not eat like that. Rogues ate like survival was a competition. This man ate like he had been trained to dine with kings. I said nothing. My mother taught me that everyone carries secrets, and most secrets are not mine to uncover. He told me his name was Kale, and I told him mine was Sienna. And for 3 days we existed in a strange suspension of normalcy. I tended his wound and fed him my food and gave him blankets to sleep by the fire. He watched me work with those calculating gray eyes, asked questions about my herbs and my healing, and my life at the edge of the forest. I answered some and deflected others. He did the same. On the second morning, he was strong enough to sit at my table, and I found myself stealing glances at him as I prepared a salve for his wound. The autumn light streamed through the windows my mother had hung with dried lavender, and it caught the angles of his face in ways that made my breath catch unexpectedly. He was beautiful, I realized. Not in the soft way of the village boys I had known, but in the way of something wild and ancient, something carved by wind and time and struggle. "What happened to your mother?" he asked, his eyes on the altar in the corner. The question should have felt intrusive, but his voice was gentle. "She died," I said. "2 winters ago. A fever took her, the kind that laughs at healers. I could save everyone except her." "I am sorry. Do not be. She lived a full life. She taught me everything she knew. And she died in this cabin, surrounded by her herbs and her memories and her daughter. That is more than most people get." He was quiet for a long moment. "My father died when I was 17, he said finally, killed by men who wanted what he had. I held him as he went. He told me to be strong, to carry on, to never let them see me grieve. So I did not. For years, I did not. And now? Now I wonder if strength means something different than he thought. If perhaps the bravest thing is not hiding the grief, but letting it exist alongside everything else. I looked at him then, really looked, and saw something beyond the calculated exterior. A man who had carried too much for too long. A man who had forgotten what it felt like to set the weight down. "My mother would have liked you," I said. "She had a talent for seeing the truth in people. I think she would have seen yours." He smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I had seen from him. It transformed his face, made him look younger, softer, more like the man he might have been without the burdens he carried. "I hope so," he said. "I would have liked to meet her." On the 4th day, I saw the wolf. I had gone to the river to wash linens when I felt the prickle of being watched. I turned slowly, my heart hammering, and found him standing in the shadows between the birch trees. A white wolf, larger than any I had ever seen, with eyes that burned like amber fire. He was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure, his fur the color of moonlight, his stance radiating a power that made my inner wolf want to drop to her belly in submission. But I was no longer part of any pack. I did not submit to anyone anymore. I held his gaze for a long moment, and something strange passed between us. Recognition, though I had never seen him before. Understanding, though we had never spoken. Then he turned and vanished into the forest like smoke, and I was left standing in the shallows with wet linens in my hands and a question I could not name burning in my chest. That night, I asked Kale about the wolf. He went still in a way that told me everything and nothing. "What wolf?" he said, too carefully. "The white one. I saw him by the river. He has been watching the cabin." Kale's jaw tightened. "He is mine." "Your wolf?" "My companion. We travel together." I set down the cup of tea I had been holding. Rogues did not have companions like that. Rogues had mangy, desperate wolves who clung to them out of survival necessity. That wolf was neither mangy nor desperate. That wolf was a king among wolves. "Who are you, really?" I asked. He met my eyes, and for a moment, I saw something raw beneath the careful mask. "Someone who does not deserve the kindness you have shown me," he said, "but someone who will not forget it." It was not an answer, but it was honest, in its way. The village came for me on the 7th day. I was hanging herbs to dry when I heard them approaching, the heavy footsteps of men who believed the world belonged to them. I recognized their scent before I saw their faces. Marcus, the beta who had tried to claim me 3 years ago. The one I had refused, the one whose rejection had made me an outcast. He had told everyone I was cursed, tainted, unworthy. And the pack had believed him because it was easier than questioning one of their own. "Sienna," he called from the edge of my property. "I know you are harboring a rogue." I stepped onto my porch, keeping my face calm even as my heart raced. "I harbor no one. I heal those who need healing. It is not the same thing." He smiled, and there was cruelty in it. "The elders have decided. The rogue must be turned over to us for judgment, and you will be punished for sheltering him. On what authority? On the authority of the pack you abandoned." "I did not abandon anyone. I was cast out. There is a difference." Marcus stepped closer, and I saw the other men behind him, 4 betas with hungry eyes and clenched fists. They had always resented me, the healer's daughter who refused to know her place. Now they had an excuse to make me pay for every slight they had imagined. "I will not ask again," Marcus said. "Bring out the rogue." A voice came from behind me, low and cold and carrying an authority that made every man in that clearing freeze. She said no. Kyle stepped past me onto the porch. He moved differently now, I noticed. The wounded rogue was gone. In his place stood something far more dangerous, a man who held himself like a weapon, whose presence seemed to fill the space around him until there was no room for anything else. Marcus laughed, but it was uncertain. "And who are you to speak, rogue?" Kyle smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "I am the man who is going to give you one chance to leave. Take it." Something in his voice made Marcus hesitate, made all of them hesitate. But pride is a poison that makes men stupid, and Marcus had been drinking it for years. He lunged. What happened next was almost too fast to follow. Kale moved like water, like wind, like something that had been fighting since before these men were born. He caught Marcus by the throat and threw him into the others, sending them all sprawling. When 2 of them scrambled up with knives drawn, he disarmed them with movements so precise they seemed almost gentle. Within seconds, all 5 men were on the ground, groaning, defeated without a single killing blow. Kale stood over them, not even breathing hard. "Tell your elders that this woman is under my protection," he said. "Tell them that the next time someone threatens her, I will not be so merciful. And tell them that if they want to know who I am, they should ask the wolves." The men fled. They ran like rabbits, like prey, and they did not look back. I stood on my porch with my hands shaking and my heart pounding and 1,000 questions on my tongue. But before I could speak, Kale turned to me, and his eyes were soft in a way I had not seen before. "I am sorry," he said. "I did not mean to bring danger to your door. You did not. They have been waiting for an excuse for years." He nodded slowly. Then we sat on my porch in the golden afternoon light, and he told me the truth. He was the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, ruler of 12 packs and guardian of the ancient laws. He had come south in disguise because someone in his court was plotting against him, feeding information to his enemies, and he needed to find them before they destroyed everything he had built. He had been attacked by assassins 3 days before I found him, left for dead in a forest he did not know. "And the White Wolf?" I asked. "My spirit bond," he said. "Fenris. He has been with me since I took the throne. He was the one who led you to me that first day. He knew you would help." I thought of the crows circling, the strange pull that had drawn me to the old oak. How could he know that? Kale looked at me with those storm-gray eyes. "Because you are my mate." He felt it before I did. The bond. The word hung between us like a held breath. Mate. Fated mate. The one the old stories spoke of. the connection that transcended pack and status and choice. I had stopped believing in such things the day my pack cast me out. "I am an Omega," I said. "A rejected one, packless, disgraced. You are a king. I am a man who has spent his whole life surrounded by people who want something from him. Power, favor, alliance. You found me bleeding and broken, and you wanted nothing except to help. Do you know how rare that is? How precious?" I did not know what to say. My mother had taught me about the bonds, about the way two souls could recognize each other across any distance, any obstacle. But she had also taught me that the world was not kind to those who dreamed too big. "I cannot go to your court," I said. "I am not made for thrones and politics. Then I will come to you, as often as I can, as long as you will have me. And if your enemies find me, if they use me against you?" He reached out and took my hand, and his touch was warm and certain. "Then I will burn their world to ash before I let them hurt you." That is not a threat. It is a promise. The days that followed were strange and sweet. Kale stayed while his wound finished healing, and we learned each other in the quiet way of two people who have been alone for too long. He helped me harvest the last of the autumn herbs, his hands clumsy but willing. I taught him which plants healed and which poisoned, and he listened with genuine interest. We walked through forests painted in red and gold, Fenris padding silently behind us, and we talked about everything and nothing. He told me about his childhood in the mountain fortress, about the father who had died too young, and the mother who had taught him to rule with wisdom rather than fear. He told me about the loneliness of the throne, the weight of decisions that affected thousands, the way power isolated even as it elevated. I told him about my mother, about the healing gift she had passed to me, about the way she had loved this land until her last breath. I told him about Marcus and the rejection, about the 3 years of solitude that had nearly broken me before they made me strong. I told him about the dreams I still had sometimes, of belonging somewhere, of mattering to someone. We did not speak of the future. It was too fragile, too uncertain, but we built something in those golden autumn days, something that felt more real than anything I had known before. The assassins came on a night when the moon was dark. I woke to Fenris's howl, a sound that shook the walls and turned my blood to ice. Kale was already on his feet, a knife in his hand that I had not known he carried. "There are 6 of them," he said. "Maybe more. Stay inside. I am not helpless." He looked at me, and I saw fear in his eyes. Not for himself, for me. "Please," he said. "I cannot fight them if I am worried about you." So I stayed. I hated it, but I stayed. The sounds of battle filtered through my walls, snarls and screams and the clash of steel. I clutched a knife of my own and prayed to whatever gods might listen that he would survive, that we would survive. When the door finally opened, Kale stood silhouetted against the moonlight, blood on his face and exhaustion in every line of his body. But he was alive. He was alive, and Fenris was behind him, and the night was quiet again. "It is over," he said. "For now." I went to him and pressed my hands to his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath my palms. "You are hurt. Nothing that will not heal." I led him inside and cleaned his wounds and did not cry, though the tears pressed hard against my eyes. He watched me work with that steady gaze, and when I finished, he cupped my face in his hands and kissed me for the first time. It was not a gentle kiss. It was desperate and fierce and full of everything we had not said. "I am yours," it said. "I choose you. Whatever comes next, I choose you." When we finally parted, breathless and trembling, he pressed his forehead to mine. "Come with me," he whispered, "to the north, to my home. Not as a secret, not as something hidden, as my queen. They will never accept me. They will learn, and those who do not will answer to me." I thought of my cabin, my mother's memory, the life I had built from nothing. I thought of the loneliness I had worn like armor, the walls I had constructed to keep the world out. And I thought of him, this impossible man who had stumbled into my life bleeding and broken, and had somehow seen me more clearly than anyone ever had. "Yes," I said. The word came easier than I expected. "Yes." We left 3 days later, after I had packed what mattered and said goodbye to my mother's altar. Cale promised we would return whenever I needed, that this place would always be mine, and I believed him. Fenris walked beside us as we traveled north, and the autumn forest blazed around us like a blessing. The northern court was everything I had feared and nothing I had expected, grand and cold and full of wolves who looked at me with suspicion. But Cale stood beside me through every introduction, every whispered doubt, every veiled insult. He named me his fated mate before the assembled packs, and when the white-haired elder demanded proof, Fenris came to stand at my side like an answer. "The spirit wolf chooses," the elder said slowly, and her eyes widened with something like awe. "She truly is." The traitor revealed himself 2 weeks later, flushed out by Cale's quiet investigation. A cousin who had coveted the throne, who had sold secrets to enemy packs for the promise of power. Cale offered him mercy, exile instead of death, but the cousin chose to fight. It did not last long. After, when the court had settled and the whispers had faded, Cale found me in the garden I had claimed as my own. I was planting herbs from seeds I had brought from home, and he knelt in the dirt beside me without caring about his fine clothes. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For seeing me. The man, not the crown. For giving me something worth fighting for." I looked at him. This Alpha King who had pretended to be a rogue, who had trusted me with his life before he knew he could trust me with his heart. And I smiled. "Thank you for finding my forest," I said, "even if you were mostly dead at the time." He laughed, and the sound was bright and free, and I thought that maybe this was what the old stories meant. Not the instant recognition, not the supernatural certainty, but this. Two broken people who chose each other anyway, who built something new from the ruins of what they had been. The autumn turned to winter, and I learned my place in the court. Not as an Omega, not as a healer from the borderlands, but as something new. The queen who tended her own garden, the mate who healed the wounded regardless of rank, the woman who had earned Fenris's loyalty, which meant more to the old wolves than any title Cale could have given me. And on the coldest night of the year, when the snow lay thick on the ground and the fire burned bright in our chambers, Cale took my hand and led me to the window. "Look," he said. Below, in the courtyard, the wolves of 12 packs had gathered. They lifted their voices in a howl that shook the stars, a sound of celebration, of welcome, of belonging. And at the front stood Fenris, his white fur gleaming, his amber eyes fixed on our window. "They are singing for you," Cale said, "for their queen." I leaned into him, this man who had changed everything, and let the sound wash over me. I had spent so long believing I was meant to be alone, that my rejection had been a judgment, a proof of my unworthiness. But standing here, wrapped in the howl of 100 wolves, I understood the truth. I had never been unworthy. I had simply been waiting. For the right moment, the right man, the right place to call home. And I had finally found it.